Come here. Buddy, if you're going to be here, you have to participate. For many sewers, it may seem that I do things backwards. For each style that I make, instead of buying a new pattern that I then fix to fit me, I already have the fitted pattern that I then fix into the new design. Free of charge, I might add. I may change the neckline, give it princess seams, turn the skirt darts into gathering, but even after all of that renovation, the new design already fits once it's finished. It still fits, more is like, because the fit never changed. I will modify the style, the design, the details, not the fit. This is how I manipulate my own basic blocks into any design I desire. And if you have used a commercial pattern that you had to fit to your body, congratulations. That is practically pattern drafting. Fitting is the hardest part, some might say the worst part. And if you've been sewing with purchased patterns, you have already been doing it. If you take this next step, you will have far less futzing and fixing to do in the future. Still, all of that was good practice regardless. Fitting a pattern to a unique body is not easy. However, it is the part that you've probably had the most prior experience with. Of course, if you have never sewn with a commercial pattern before, again, congratulations. Excellent job avoiding that one particular nightmare. Fitting is an ordeal, but pattern manipulation is nothing like fitting. Which is lucky because I am not a fit expert. I have expertise in fitting exactly one body, my own. But in fitting everything on everyone, a true virtuoso is rare. I also don't have to fit things to myself very often either, hence why I remain so very rusty. Once the blocks fit, the hard part is over. Now, I use the term blocks to describe my foundation patterns that I use each time when creating new designs. However, I will level with you, the following terms have gotten pretty messy. Blocks, sloper, foundation pattern. They've become a sort of soup. Unless you plan on entering the garment industry, what you call your foundational patterns hardly exactly matters. I call my basic starting patterns blocks. That's a bodice block, skirt block, and sleeve block for those who are new to this mystic system. Why no trousers? This general scheme for designing patterns started in the 20th century after folks began properly ditching corsetry. It took several decades for trousers to become a unisex item of apparel, and therefore trousers were not included in dressmaking for the longest time. Trousers are also modified in a slightly different way from the rest to deal with the bifurcation of it all. Still, I will discuss them later in our adventures. I think it's best to think of blocks as almost proprietary in a sense. Each company might have their own, a starting standard pattern based on a certain fit model perhaps. And in our case, that fit model will be you. A sloper instead is like a second skin. Imagine it as having an exacting fit, almost too exacting, closer than close with little room to breathe or brunch. A block is a sloper plus any consistently desired adjustments. A little more height in the shoulder for padding, a little more ease under the arm. We fit a sloper precisely to the body. A block is a little more flexible. For example, my personal blocks are currently a little smaller than I am. If ease is generally added for a looser fit, my blocks have negative ease built in instead. In fact, due to entropic aging and general cookie consumption, this is now half purposeful and half by accident. But it doesn't bother me because personally, I am rather squishy. I like my basic starting patterns to be a little tight on me because, like a liquid, my volume will sort of just fill any container I zip it into. So a little negative ease not only doesn't bother me, it's just what I personally prefer. You may want some positive ease instead, so nothing is ever pinching. You may prefer a tighter arm side for better range of movement, or a lower one because you don't love fabric touching you. For a sloper to be correct, it would have to fit your body exactly. For blocks to be just right, they only have to fit as you would like. How you want your basic patterns to fit your body is up to you alone. There is no right or wrong block pattern, only the pattern which is right or wrong for you. You can make a few, in fact, trace them in thicker card to have on hand in case you often fluctuate between different normals. A summer block and a winter one, a casual block and a formal one for wovens and one for knits. And no, I won't be covering knits. It can also be convenient to have different starting points for oft-turned-to designs. I personally keep a version of my bodice block pattern on hand with the all-in-one sleeve modification already integrated, because I use it so very often in my own design projects that it just makes sense to have a card version nearby. And I do recommend you trace your block patterns onto card once you have them done and dusted. You will be using them so often that you'll want a sturdier copy to trace from on the regular. In fashion school, we used giant rolls of manila paper, like the folders for documents, but you can use poster board from the grocery convenient craft store instead. I have often used black poster board with white gel pen labeling as a sort of dark mode colored block pattern. I always get questions about these as if the material must have been something quite special, but I promise it was just thick black paper. No materials used in pattern making need be particularly special at all, really. To make your own sewing patterns, you will need paper, a ruler, paper scissors, writing implements, pencils and colored pens or markers preferably, sewing pins, tape, and a few yards of muslin fabric for making mock-ups. These basic ingredients allow for endless variation. The hardest thing to come by may be the table space to work on, though both the dining table and the floor will work fine in a pinch. For the drafting, that is, your joints may get upset. Now, when it comes to paper, of course, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of options. Though newsprint, butcher paper, brown craft paper, and even gift wrap will all work well for the purposes of pattern making. I like to use what is called alphanumeric paper, so called due to a 1-inch grid of nonsense numbers and letters printed on its smooth surface. Alphanumeric paper is handy for this ghostly grid, but also because it is a little on the sheer side, which proves useful when tracing things along the pattern making path. It comes in heavy rolls that cost more to ship than they do to actually purchase. I learned flat pattern drafting using alphanumeric paper in university, and therefore have loyalty stuck with it, seeing as I personally use dozens of yards a month. For anyone outside the industry, it is a pretty unnecessary expense. Large sheets of blank newsprint at the craft store would work just as well and would be my recommendation for a beginner. Now, a ruler. And I say a ruler because I only use this particular one 98% of the time. I prefer a transparent 18-inch plastic ruler. 2 inches wide, they usually come in a slightly bendy plastic featuring red or black numbering and gridded indications. Found in the drawing section of the craft or art supply store or often in the quilting area of a fabric shop, they're easily found on the internet as well, like everything else. They do make this useful style in both imperial and metric versions, and I do apologize to those who are about to suffer through all my American imperial suggestions. Also, any ruler will do, but I find the clear 18-inch buddies so incredibly useful that I simply must recommend you get your hands on one. The more optional ruler to have on hand is one without a single marking at all. A French curve is an apparently francophile curved bit of plastic that is useful for tracing consistent curves, for, say, arm size or side seams over the hips. If you don't mind sketching in curves on your own, a French curve ruler is entirely optional. Next up, paper scissors. Not fabric scissors, paper scissors. Scissors that are just for paper. Even non-sewers have heard tales of the wrath coming for any fool who should so much as think about using fabric scissors on paper. A simple set of standard everyday scissors work just fine for pattern making. I myself use giant, heavy, professional pattern shears, which help double as a self-defense weapon in case of spontaneous sewing studio invasion. In reality, they were a part of my freshman design supply kit at university, and I have used them ever since. The shorter blades make it easy to cut around little curves, and the giant, heavy handles still somehow tend to tire my hands less than normal craft scissors. They're not too incredibly expensive, so if you too wish to arm yourself with a massive set of shears, search for 12-inch professional tailor scissors, and I'll link some below. Next up, I have a shocking recommendation that you simply never see me use, and that's pencils. That's right, pencils. Always use pencil. The only reason I do not is because I need my lines to show up on camera. Mechanical pencils give a nice, fine, precise line. Standard wood pencils are great for sketching in curves. All pencils can be erased, which of course comes in handy while designing on the fly. I recommend pencils for beginners, but of course the more daring you are, the more permanent a pen you may prescribe. I use thin washable markers in various colors most of the time. You may like regular ballpoint or otherwise inking pens, or permanent markers, or a swan feather quill, but in any case I recommend having a few different colors of ink ready at your disposal. I will continue to use mostly markers in my demonstrations, but I recommend you use pencil until you become as foolishly overconfident as I am. As for tape, I prefer the matte clear plastic kind from the imaginary green tartan Highlands, but any brand will do. Masking tape is a bit more earth-friendly, but I hear it unsticks over time and gets a bit brittle, so each drafter must decide for themselves. Washi tape could be fun and rather pretty, for example, but I haven't tried it. If it sticks, it will work. Again, I use some standard Scotch magic tape myself. And the last thing we will need for pattern drafting and modification is a willing subject. Whether the participant in question is a volunteer, client, friend, or more likely you yourself and you, we will need a human to create for standing by before we can move forward. Oh, and lastly, some ideas, dreams, and plenty of perseverance, but those can't be found at the craft store either. And if you can't muster up your own, spell summoned is fine. Ready? Set? Okay, go ahead and just sketch out everything you'll need on a big blank sheet of paper. Make sure you get the amount of dart fullness right, the angle of the shoulder correct, all those details included. Go ahead and just draw it out all at once. Because if you can't do it from scratch, whatever the hell that means, you're not a real pattern drafter, are you? Thankfully, that's BS. Being able to create the basic blocks from nothing, from measurements, from miasma hanging in the ether, doesn't make anyone better than anyone else. Forgive me, but I just have to get this bit out of the way. Who cares how you made, acquired, enchanted your patterns into being? All that matters is having cool clothes at the end that fit you how you'd like. If you want to be one of the world's top tailors, learn to make a block pattern from scratch. If you want to make epic clothes at home, do whatever you have to get this next part done. But yes, blocks. How are we going to get some? Let me outline some options. The first is to draft the blocks purely from measurements. For this, we will need one more additional piece of equipment, a soft measuring tape. Though technically you shouldn't take your own measurements, because bending around and moving to do so will give you slightly to very twisted results. So find a measuring tape and a friend, or minion, or willing stranger. If you truly must measure yourself by yourself, I recommend doing so and then choosing a set of measurements that mostly work from a more standardized chart to follow for the drafting process. Why? Because one messed up back shoulder arc measurement can distort the entire drawing into the most wonkadoodle shape imaginable, and you will become disillusioned fast. If you think drafting a bodice sloper using your exact measurements will mean you get to skip all of the mock-ups and the fiddly fitting parts, congratulations, you're still up on that high horse, and he smells. Or you are a pattern drafting god, which seems unlikely, but I guess is not impossible. If you have done this already 100 times, then fine, just go for it. If you have drafted a block pattern from scratch a grand total of 0 times, then maybe just listen to me. Once again, I am trying to help you. But we will come back to drafting the bodice block from scratch because really the bodice is the bother. Everything else we can draft a little easier. There are so many other options for making a working block pattern, and I think you should consider each of them at least briefly. For example, while I have thus far been discussing flat pattern drafting and will continue to do so, there is another method of apparel design you may have heard of: draping. I like draping. It's fun and freeing just messing around with fabric on a dress form. But that's the thing. Draping on yourself is difficult, and most people don't have a custom exact replica of their actual human body in mannequin form just laying about. Which is fine. I get asked all the time, which dress form do you recommend? And the answer is, I don't. If you find that you absolutely love draping and it's your preferred method of pattern design, then yes, go ahead and invest in a custom dress form of some kind. But a dress form is not an essential piece of sewing, dressmaking, or pattern making equipment. You do not need a dress form to make an entire custom wardrobe. I feel comfortable telling you that because I don't have one. Draping is one more way to make a block pattern, or at least one way to make a serviceable first draft. Again, this is best done with the buddy system, but you can certainly give it a try on yourself if you are keen and introverted. Now, remember when I asked you if you had ever used a commercial pattern before? Well, if it fit right out of the package, again, congratulations. But for the rest of us, you probably had to fit and fix that thing, right? Well, same principle, new pattern, and it may just be the last. What you want to do is find yourself a commercial sloper / block fitting shell, etc. pattern. Each company has a different name for these, though some have begun to discontinue their fitting shells entirely, so check the resale market, Etsy and eBay, etc. Big Pattern are afraid of folks like me who want you to go independent. And they might also be bankrupt, but I don't think that was me. A fitting shell pattern is a hilarious invention of the commercial pattern industry. The idea is as follows. You learn to fit the shell pattern to your body, making notes, and then use those notes and modifications every time on every other pattern you ever buy. Cute. That's going to be a no from me for us because each designer, pattern company, season maybe could end up including different amounts of ease. So while the theory is adorable, it's simply not very practical. And besides, once you have fixed and fit that fitting shell to you, oops, you've just made yourself some blocks. Now you don't need anything other than your aforementioned pencil to create any style you could ever desire. Instead of starting with a blank page, find yourself a fitting shell pattern, and if that doesn't work, find a dress pattern with similar qualities. You'll need something that has a set-in sleeve, preferably a long sleeve, a darted bodice. Going from darts to princess seams is easy, going from princess seams to darts is less so, and a darted straight skirt. It doesn't matter if you like this finished style on yourself, it's going to be a blank slate once you're done. Find something in the catalog that is as close to this ideal as you can. Just because they don't call it a fitting shell doesn't mean you can't use it as one. But you are still convinced, aren't you? Sure that if you can just take the most accurate measurements possible, you can draft this thing all in one go. May I then suggest letting a computer do it for you? If you are that confident in your measuring ability, give a block pattern generator a try. There are a few different options on the grand old interwebs, or so I have heard. I have never used one myself, but here tell there are PDF custom pattern generators available that will draft you a personalized pattern from your precise measurements. It may be worth a shot if these other methods are not working out for you. Yet another option is to support a small business nearby with a call. Some custom tailors and dressmakers still exist out there in the real world, in actual space, and they may just be able to make you a block pattern. It's worth inquiring at least to see if they can save you some time. Some will say no outright, sure, but others may say any client is a client and will happily make you a pattern for the right fee. This wouldn't be the cheapest way to get a block pattern to use moving forward, but it might just be the easiest. Once again, I will link you to the playlist of videos I already have collected on these subjects, but I will also be starting over with a blank page from scratch again with you in the next video. Draft a pattern from my video instructions, download one wholesale, Frankenstein something commercially available. No matter where you get the first draft from, fitting the damn thing is the next step. So since you've got to fix the rotten thing anyhow, I figured you can go ahead and have my pattern too. I've linked below to a scan of my actual block patterns, so if you're exactly size Bianca, then maybe it will work for you too. I leave it to you to figure out how to print them some way clever. I've never done that sort of thing, and maybe they'll just be one more version worth futzing with to get the perfect pattern for you. Also, as may have been obvious before this point, I have exactly zero experience with menswear, so I apologize for that. I have expertise again in only fitting my own personal body shape. Not only do I not have any training, but I've never even attempted menswear on my own. I don't even know any men beyond the few in my immediate family. And while a lot of the information I'll be covering in this series will still help with things other than women's wear, I do recommend checking out other experts here on the vast interwebs. Now in the next video, I will be covering a method of block pattern acquisition that I've never gone over before: draping. And in order to follow along with me exactly, I will add a few more things onto the supply list. One being a close-fitting, light-colored t-shirt, not something sleeveless, preferably something with a little bit of a sleeve on it, just because we don't know what we might need. About 1.5 yards of spare muslin or other similar simple fabric, and also your desired foundation garments. It's important that you wear what you plan to wear underneath your clothes when you are fitting your blocks as well. So gather the materials next time we're making a bodice block. Thank you as always for watching today, and thank you to my patrons who make my work and these videos possible.